This is my third video in a series of 10 easy drawing tips. So if you've missed the first two, make sure you look them up. This first tip is when we have shadows on the ground. This is a very common issue I see. So here we have a quick tree trunk and here we have the shadow, and I often see shadows on the ground. In fact, most commonly I see shadows on the ground that look much like this. And well, it works in the sense of we certainly know what it is. But is there a better way with a better result, a more realistic result? Well, let's just get another tree quickly in place and then we'll look at possibly a better way to consider doing this. Although, as in many cases, perhaps the more effective way does take a little more time and effort. Here we go. Instead of doing a solid outline, which doesn't really reflect what we see on the ground exactly, I create the shadow by edging it with grass, because this is grass that is in fact in shadow. And the effect isn't a smooth continuous line, but it's a jagged, a shaggy effect of where the shadow meets the sunlight. That reflects the structure of the grass underneath. And so the marks I use to reflect that same structure of the grass underneath that creates the effect in life. What do you think? More realistic? This next tip is a bit of a technical architectural one, but it's to do with pediments, these pointy sections on top of neoclassical buildings. Now, do you see a problem with what I've drawn? Let me redraw it and then highlight the problem where I see so often when these are drawn. So I'll just quickly get this done. You'll only have a second to see if you can spot the difference. Can you see the difference? There it is, it's the corners. This is the way it looks and this is not the way it looks, but it's easy to presume that coming to a point is how it is when we don't look carefully. Because, well, it's a triangle on a rectangle. No, not quite. This next tip is when we have something that stands in front of something else and the something that is in front isn't a solid object. And this is very often in nature, whether it's leaves, foliage, or twigs, particularly winter trees, bare winter trees. So here we have, again, what it would be natural to do, to put these, I don't even know what you call them, leaves, spikes, that go in front of this tree that we see behind. So here is another way to consider doing it. Again, this is going to take a little more planning and a little more time and effort, but have a look at the difference and which one do you think is more realistic? Which one has the better effect in our drawing? In the first, they really just run together, but in the second one, there's a definite sense that this light foliage is in front of the tree that's further behind. And here we have it in a more finished drawing. This next one is how we often see trees drawn, and I think it's how we often see trees drawn because of the camera, which brings everything together to the one plane. Now that may look okay, but if we look down on this tree the way it's drawn, it actually looks very flat, squashed flat. Everything looks like it's pretty much the same distance away from us. And our marks, our ink marks, our lines all show that. And yet, if I were to look down on top of this tree in life, it would have a top and then it would come out in 360 degrees all around that center point. I'd be looking at something more like this. It may not be a perfect circle, but it would be something in all likelihood that looks more like this. But I haven't created that feel with the way I've put my marks, my lines, my ink on the paper. Because when I look at this, if I were to stand there looking at the tree, different parts of the tree are much further away than other parts, both because some parts are growing towards me, some parts aren't, and some parts are growing away from me and they're actually higher than me and getting higher, and that means they're further away. So I want to create the sense that this tree is some bits closer, some bits not so close, some bits closer, some bits not so close, some bits closer, closer, not so close. I want to create this rather than everything feeling like it's a flat surface, pretty much the same distance. This is how we capture the effect of realism in our trees. With this one, I've tried to do just that. The parts that from the photo I've worked out are growing towards me and are closer, I've drawn with more detail, heavier lines, more values. What do you think? This next tip is an important one. It's to do with strategizing and planning, as so many of these are, particularly drawing directly in ink where we can't erase anything. So here's some wobbly steps. And well, that's pretty much what it would be easy to draw. But I'm particularly wanting to focus on these lines here, because if I look at my finished drawing, if I'd drawn those straight continuous lines, I would have robbed myself of the opportunity of creating a more realistic effect. When I look at the lifelike scene, when I look at the photo, they're not smooth straight lines, continuous and very regular. No, in fact, with the brickwork, there are little indents where the bricks and the mold and the weathering has created shade and shadow. And then the grass line is not a continuous solid line. And I could have added grass marks on top of what I've already drawn, but that wouldn't have looked very realistic either. Instead, establishing where the grass edge is with a series of dots, it lets me then take a more considered view with what marks I'll use to create the grass edge effect. What do you think? Back to architecture. Where we have Gothic windows such as this, I often see them drawn looking like this. That islands have been drawn floating in between supports, the glass supports. And I find it often ends up having a very cartoon effect. What I find better is to really draw in the darkness, to draw the tracery by negative space. I find that ends up giving a much more realistic feel, effect, certainly with the sort of line work I use to draw. I find it's easier to get the spaces all equal and to get nice thin tracery doing it that way. And this is the method I've used for not just the same window here, but the two side windows as well. How do you think it works? Oh, this one up here as well. This next tip also to do with edges. Please hit the like button if you're finding these interesting, and don't forget there are 2 more videos of 10 tips each. Each tip focused on one simple point. But this point though is to do with the edges of the trees. Now, I'm using a pencil because my finished drawing for this tree was in pencil. But look at the top how I've outlined the canopies the way I have. We don't just draw things by lines and by edges. We can also draw them by value, and that's what I'm highlighting here now, where I don't have a continuous line, but I have the ends of hatching coming up hard against clear space. And this is what I've done here. See how I don't have an outline? I might have in some cases a few little dots, a few dashes, but often it's just the edge of the hatching. And it's not just on the edge of the canopy, it's also in these marks, this section of the other side of Sydney Harbour. This next point is to be very careful about controlling the marks we use. This grass scene, part of it is the wonderful stretch of sunny lawn that goes back to that lovely looking chair sitting in the sun. My problem is, if you look here, I've used basically the same marks to draw the grass, all the grass. And yet, when we look at our reference, the grass that we see close up is not the same as the grass we see further back. I mean, it's the same grass, but how we see it is very different. But it's easy to think, oh yeah, the grass, and just to move back with the grass, maybe making the grass a little bit smaller, but that is only a token effort compared to visually how the grass changes in appearance from the closest grass, which we really can see in quite a lot of detail, to the grass at the far end near the chair, where really we're looking at a colour, perhaps a slightly textured colour. here's another way of approaching it with our mark making, one that I think creates the lovely sense of lawn stretching back in the sunshine, which we do not get with the more two-dimensional, if you like, upright first way of drawing the grass. It's all about applying foreshortening to grass. This next one is about not drawing from one side of the paper to the other, whether it's from the bottom up or, as is often the case, from the top down. Sometimes it's from left to right. There's a problem with that in that this landscape that I'm drawing, and I am referencing something, this landscape that I'm drawing, when I start drawing from the top down, I have nothing to go by. I'm basically just drawing what I see, and I end up with marks that can be very much the same. Very much the same thickness, very much the same heaviness, very much the same hatching. Because I'm drawing what I see. The problem is, here's another way of looking at it. If I strategize where I start and what I do next, I can adjust my mark making to create the effects of distance that we see here. I can make choices about where I'm heavier in my marks and where I'm lighter. I can make more choices more easily about the detail, particularly by drawing the closer, clearer things first. Now, sort of flowing on from that, we're not just talking about a landscape, but a great possibility we have when we draw is to put the effect of distance in that we don't always get clearly in the photos. But it's not just for landscapes. See, I've done the same thing with this cityscape. Clearer, heavier detail, closer, and then moving further away. But even with one building, when the one building is large, see this closest corner, heavier, stronger, and then a lighter effect further away each side and further away again. Even a row of cars, the closer car and the furthest car are drawn very differently, with different pens in this case, and less detail. And we saw how it worked with this tree. Even in a relatively small object that's relatively close, we can draw different parts in different ways with different types of marks and even pens to create a sense of 3 dimensions, to create a sense of reality that the photo often doesn't have at all. Our aim isn't to copy the photos, our aim is to improve on them. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. I hope you found these 10 points interesting. Please hit the like button for me, and why not look at the other videos with their 10 easy tips. I'll see you next time. Bye.